Welcome to Chapter 13, Managing Employee Benefits. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to answer the following questions um, and meet these objectives. You should be able to define a benefit and identify the four strategic benefits considerations, analyze the differences between employee benefits in the U.S. versus those in other countries, distinguish between mandated and voluntary benefits, and provide 3 examples of each. Discuss trends in retirement plans and be able to compare defined benefit and defined contribution plans. Explain the importance of managing the cost of health benefits and identify some methods of doing so. Describe the growth of financial, family-oriented, and time-off benefits and their importance to many employees. So when we talk about a benefit in business and specifically in HR, we're talking about any kind of tangible indirect rewards that you're provided individually or as a group as part of being a member of an organization. They can include retirement plans, health, life, and disability insurance, PTO, which is paid time off, and more. U.S. employers often provide benefits of some sort, and taxes pay for many other countries' benefits. So our benefit cost in the U.S. is about 33 to 50% of our payroll expenses. That's what's allocated towards that. And the highest percentage of benefits go to health insurance, which is why you have some companies that try not to pay health insurance. They try to put employees at a part-time or a contract labor position so they can avoid paying this cost. When we look at compensation and benefit costs per hour of private industry versus state and local government employers, you can see the dollars spent versus the percentage of how much of the pie is being dedicated to that particular element. You can look at total compensation, total benefits, insurance, and you can see that your highest dollar amount comes from total compensation, wages, and salaries. It will either represent 100%. Wages and salaries will be 69.4%. When you look at your total benefits, so it's all the benefits combined, there's about 30.6%. When you compare that to employers on the state and local government level, you can see where it's a slight increase under total benefits, but when you look at wages and salaries, there is a decrease in the percentage of how much is allocated, but you can see that there's a slight tick up in the actual dollars that are invested in wages and salaries. All right. Insurance, you can see private employers usually pay, 254, which is about 8.1%, while state and local governments will invest about 522 with 11.9%. So you can see that the pay is not a staggering difference, right? Either direction. So they're complementary, which there's some inferences that are aligned with this reality. And I want you to consider what those inferences are. When we look at our HR strategy and how we tie in benefits, it's adopted as part of our total rewards package. That can depend on how large your organization is, how competitive the workforce is, the life cycle that your organization is currently in versus where it projects to be, the demographics of your team, any financial circumstances that the organization's faced with, and whatever your overarching strategic approach is as a corporation or small business. There are some advantages, of course, that come from strategically aligning your benefits, in that it helps to aid in recruiting and retaining employees. It can improve the performance of the organization as a whole, meet legal requirements, and it can reinforce the philosophy of social and corporate citizenship within your organization. So there are various benefits to having which is funny, to having a benefits package, right? There are some perks. Something else is that it can help to influence your team members' decisions about who to work for, whether to stay or leave the company, and also when to retire. You can gauge based on when benefits wean off or peak based on the best time to retire. Sometimes there are certain benefits that you're not awarded until you've been with the company for so long, or certain retirement benefits that you cannot gain until you reach a certain age, or things of that nature. So it can help influence that. There are some tax favored statuses of benefits because most are not taxed as income to employees, except when you look at the case of PTO. Paid time off is a taxed income. Now, gross up is, when you hear gross up, it means to increase the net amount of what you receive to include the taxes owed on that amount. So your net amount is what's after, right? After you pull everything else out, what's left behind. And you're needing to increase that leftover amount to include what's then the taxes that are then owed on that remaining amount. That's the gross up. Global benefits, of course, is there's some differences in how benefits are derived and given across the globe. So that could be how an employer in another country views total hourly compensation, PTO for childbirth and medical disability, paid sick leave policies, amount of paid leave and vacation time, retirement and health insurance plans. So in a lot of countries, employers and employees are taxed heavily to pay into government funds. Reason being, they tax heavily to pay into government funds that then factor back out into how they cover a lot of the social benefits for the citizens as a whole. Right? Now, when we look at multinational companies, that you have to determine how you're going to compensate both those individuals that are in the host country, that are from the host country, as well as those who are expatriates, who are coming from a foreign country to come stay and work in that host country. That way, you're making sure that both the nationals and the expatriates are felt like, and they are being treated fairly and equally. So you have to make decisions about compensation that can attract and retain employees for any business that you do abroad. Now, public sector workers enjoy more benefits than those in the private. You usually belong to labor unions at a much higher rate than those who are not working for the government. Your union contracts will include free health care and traditional defined benefit pension plans. Hence why you see people, there's always a constant drive to and encouragement to get a government job, right? Because of these various perks that come along with it. Of course, no one tells you the reality of when there's government shutdowns, how that impacts your pay. So there's pros and cons to every work environment, right? There's not one that's better or worse. How you go about managing benefits is the goal is to provide value while making sure it's cost effective. So those benefits need to be flexible. You need to create some kind of benefits and a status for those that are part-time. If not, what happens is that you'll have constant turnover of part-time employees who are focused on trying to find either another part-time job that provides benefits or a full-time job that provides benefits, so that they can have those things, the basic needs met. You also can, there's a possibility that you'll end up with someone who has, a part-time job and a full-time job, or two part-time jobs, one of which can help cover the cost of benefits if that person has to get something outside of the workplace. Now you have to consider domestic partner as well as older worker benefit needs. And those decisions are broken down into covering these 6 questions. What percentage of the total award should be provided as benefits? What benefits do employees actually value? Because you may have some that are just not valued, just not even utilized. And the standard versus flexible benefit choices, which employees should be covered, what is the budget for these benefits, and what are the internal versus external administration of these budgets. And these are the 6 decisions that every HR department or HR professional should weigh with senior management. When we look at flexible benefit plans, it allows you to select what benefits you prefer from a select group of options that your company, outlines and provides. There are some challenges because a lot of employees may choose an inappropriate package. Younger employees may decide not to participate in the retirement plan, right? They feel like they're too far away from the retirement option. You can have adverse selection where only higher risk employees select and use certain benefits. And there could be higher administrative costs for the company as a whole. So you have to then go back to remembering that it's flexible but also cost effective. When we look at part-time employee benefits, most of us don't receive employee benefits when you're working part-time. You're also least likely to receive health and life insurance benefits, and this can create a burden on part-time employees. So there's, of course, you're constantly looking for options and alternatives to this state of affairs. Now, what a company can do is create their own full and part-time thresholds so that they can accommodate both their full-time and part-time employees' needs. There's this chart that provides you a glimpse as to access, the percentage of employees that actually have access to a certain benefit, and then the percentage of employees that actually participate in that. And this is looking at private sector, part-time versus full-time employees. And you see within the retirement benefit, 37% of their part-time employees actually have access to this benefit, but only 19% participate. There are various factors as to why. Sometimes it's because, as I pointed out earlier, some younger employees may feel that they're not near retirement age, so why would I be participating in it? Not realizing that the more you participate in it early, the more you can accumulate. And with that, even if you leave the company, there's certain benefits can transfer with you to another company. Additionally, when you look at the full-time employees, now look how the amount the percentages go up, right? You have full-time employees who now that access is 74% and 58%. So more than half of them actually participate. The thing is that it could be based on age. It could also be based on the fact that with that retirement cost, if you're part-time, can you actually afford to pay into that? And so whether it's because you feel like you're too young to, or it's that, oh, can I really afford that extra money to set aside for that, to participate, not necessarily as a part-time employee as I could as full-time. The same is true when you look at medical and life insurance. You see that part-time, there's 23% that have access, only 12% participate. A lot of times it's due to the cost factor of whether or not you can afford to pay for the medical with your part-time pay. You see that 86% of full-time employees have access, only 63% participate, so it's still more than half. When you look at life insurance, 13% of part-time employees have access, only 11% participate. That's a very good number if you look at it, right? It's well more than 50% of the 13% that that have access. And usually because life insurance cost is relatively low compared to medical care. Full-time employees, 72% have access, 71% participate. So more than half of the employees as a whole in the company participate. Definitely almost 100% of those who have access participate, right? When we look at domestic partner benefits, the U.S. Supreme Court voted against DOMA, but what happens is that same-sex spouses may be entitled to various benefits. Where gay marriage is legal, you can, as a company, determine whether you're going to treat the same-sex spouses the same as traditional married couples with regard to benefits or not. Insurance issuers cannot deny coverage to same-sex married couples, and employers must provide benefits provided under federal law, but only in those states where gay marriage is legal. Right? Now, if you don't provide benefits to married same-sex couples, it can result in a lawsuit under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And providing benefits to married same-sex couples shows that the organization is accommodating and respectful of all employees, not just a small segment. This can help when you're recruiting employees. It can help with retaining employees. It could raise satisfaction from your employees because they see a more inclusive environment than an exclusive environment. When we look at our older workers, remember older workers are deemed ages 40 and older. Most of us are focusing on the 60 and older, but an older worker is considered age 40 and older. Benefits attractive to older workers is being able to have modified work schedules, some part-time benefits, simplified seasonal travel, wellness programs, and annual financial planning counseling. And then if you do phased retirement programs, which we talked about in a previous chapter, it allows your employees to work part-time and withdraw some retirement funds at the same time, so that you're helping to now phase them out of the company, but keeping them engaged, but also allowing them to supplement what they're not making full-time with the use of retirement funds. When we look at how we bring technology into the administration of benefits, there is a process called open enrollment. And this is the allotted time when you can change your participation level in various benefit plans and switch between the different options that are provided. Companies are finding ways to outsource administration of benefits, and you can use a third-party administrator, TPA, which is a vendor that provides these services to you, where you don't have to try to handle this internal. There are self-service options where you can use internet and computer-based systems to communicate benefits information, provide surveys, facilitate administration of those benefits, decrease expenses, and communicate across the various HR functions and connecting all of those functions in one environment. Providing a self-service option allows you as an employee to change your choices at your leisure based on that window of time that you have to track your balances, because you may be falling short in a certain area. You can possibly be able to swap over and utilize another benefit to counterbalance what you're probably exhausting in another area, and to be able to send in any questions that you have for HR staff members, as well as to any third-party providers. Some of the metrics that are oftentimes used would be tuition reimbursement costs, PTO utilization, benefits as a percent of payroll, retirement plan participation rate. When we look at benefits cost control, it helps to reduce or drop benefits. It's a cost sharing feature with employees. There's sponsored wellness programs. It helps to engage employees into taking better control of their health education, being more informed, helping to change prescription drug programs, and also consolidating, right? Merging in some of those benefits packages. So how do we go about communicating what benefits are available and what they entail? Because many employees aren't aware of the values and costs associated with benefits. And so you need to be able to provide various methods to get that information disseminated. So you can use both online and print materials. You can have group sessions, personal counseling sessions, as well as having a website, and even finding ways to interact using social media. When you communicate this information, you need to consider time and frequency, how you go about getting this information out, when you get it out, how often, the various methods that you use to communicate, and if there's some significant changes to the benefits that you are promoting, and why, the rationale to why you're sharing the information. When you create a statement that's based on benefits, it has to translate those benefits into dollar amounts so people understand the value of the benefits that they are receiving. There are both legally mandated and voluntary benefits, and you as an organization should offer a broad variety so that you can compete for and retain employees. Some of you may have or currently participate in a cafeteria benefit plan that gives you a budget, and you can purchase a bundle of benefits that are most important to you from a menu of options offered by your company, versus it being just two set kind of packages, right? A gold and a silver, or a bronze, silver and gold is something that's more of some bundling that allows you to then select and opt in or opt out of certain benefits. Figure 13.6 shows you the types of benefits you have: healthcare, financial, time off, family, retirement, and security benefits. Those that are in blue are the ones that are legally required, and the ones in green are all voluntary. So if you see, it's not legally required for you to have dental and vision care or wellness program. It's not legally required for you to have severance pay, to cover any relocation and home buying assistance. It's not required for you to be provided life, disability, and long-term care insurance. There's no legal requirement for you to be paid for when you have to take off for public service, or holidays, vacation, bereavement. It's not legally required for a company to even provide you with a 401k plan, or any kind of defined benefit or contribution plans. What is required is that if you're in the military and you must leave to serve, they do have to pay you for that. They have to provide some provisions for COBRA and HIPAA, for PACA and medical plans, Medicare, FMLA, Social Security, ADA, ADEA, OWBPA, workers' comp, and unemployment. Those are the core. Everything else are just added. They're perks that a company can or does not, or can provide or not, or choose not to. Now, legally required. 1935, there's the passing of Social Security Act that makes sure that old age survivors' disability retirement benefits are provided through companies. Medicare is provided for those age 65 and older, and both the employer and the employee are taxed. It has a tax rate of 6.2% for a total combined rate of 12.4%. Medicare has a tax of 1.45% for a combined total of 2.9%. And then there's some additional Medicare tax for higher income employees of 0.9%. So when you wonder why you have a lot of people in politics, and primarily those within the Republican Party, who are trying to do away with Medicare, look closely as to why. Right? The cost to the employer, all right? It would be different if the cost was just to the employee. If the cost was if just the employee was taxed for Medicare, I highly doubt that people would be fighting it. But when you look at your corporate spend, the budget that you must allocate, you're then saying, I have to set aside as a corporation, what is that? Let's see, 8.6%, right? I have to set aside about 8.6% to cover just one employee, to cover this employee, for each employee. Why? I don't want to, and so then it's government operated, which means that there's a budget that's allocated towards the overseeing and operation of this. So they would rather cut those costs and put them into something else where, how can I put it in a way, where there is a direct benefit to government and to corporations, right? Because if you think about it this way, remember we said those that work in government already have free health. Let's go back. I'm going to go back a few slides. It's very interesting when you look at the dynamics. Well, it's more than a few slides, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Free healthcare and traditional defined benefit pension plans, part of their union contracts, right? Now, but here's the interesting thing. You also have politicians who are trying to do away with labor unions. Interesting, right? But the reason being is because the labor union represents the employee. And if you are the employer, you don't want this middleman to stand between you and the employee. You want to be able to dictate to the employee. So if you have a lot of politicians who come from corporate backgrounds, who have their own corporations, or they have constituents who do, they want to make sure they protect their interest. And so their best interests are to do away with the middleman that provides them with the greatest threat, which are labor unions. If you get rid of the unions, then that employee is at your mercy. At that point, there's no one enforcing and advocating on behalf of the employee. So, but politicians also, when you look at Congress and them, they have free health, their health care is covered. Like, really? So yes, they'll do away with yours, even though they're all, if you look at the vast majority of people that are in political office, you look at those, just look closely. We talk about Congress and everything. They're all um, they're all retirement age and beyond, but yet they want to do away with Medicare because it doesn't impact them. They're covered regardless. They are covered regardless. They don't have to worry about it. So that is the thing. This is why you must be you have to pay close attention to what's happening in politics, because what happens politically impacts the corporations. It impacts small business. So the long-term viability of both of these taxes is in question. And they're actually talking about doing away with Medicare. And really it comes down to what it boils down to. They want to say about the cost to the government. It boils down to the cost to corporations, period, point blank. It boils down to whether it's small business, mid-sized business, or large-sized business. The fact is no one wants to have to allocate that 8.6%, and actually is higher than that. I messed up my number. It's it's higher than that. I messed up my number. No one wants to allocate that amount per employee. Right? Why? I'd rather utilize that money for something else. So when we look at workers' compensation, we have a benefit that we provide to anyone who's injured on the job. And there's a balance of the rights of the employer as well as the rights of the employees as to how that's tied to compensation. There's a no-fault insurance that if you're injured, you can receive benefits even if the accident was your fault, right? Then there's exclusive remedy that is only provided to injured workers to compensate for work-related injuries. When the Social Security Act of 1935 was enacted, it established the unemployment compensation part, where it provides minimum level of benefits for those who are out of work. And every state operates its own system. So the benefits also differ by state. And companies, once again, pay into the unemployment tax. Now, if you're out of work and you're actively looking for employment, you can receive 26 weeks of pay between the range of 50 to 80% of that pay rate. The key thing is actively looking. And so, of course, the department is having you outline where you've been applying to jobs, how frequently you're applying. You have to document this to show I'm unemployed, but I am actively looking. And at that point, they can pay for 50 to 80% of your pay for 26 weeks. Now, there's what they call a three-legged stool of retirement income, traditional and modern. Traditional was from 1940 to 1980, and then modern was everything after 1980. Under the traditional model, it focused on employer-funded pension plan as a defined benefit. Both of these models are factoring in Social Security and retiree savings, but the difference is the modern view is looking at employee-funded retirement plans as a defined contribution. Do you see the difference? Before, the pension plan was funded by the employer, by the company, and now it's funded by the employee. So how do we come up with these concepts for the plan? vesting is a benefit that can't be taken away, and no pension rights accrue if they have not been employed long enough to be vested. Some companies say that you have to be vested within the company for 5 years or more. It's usually the threshold before you're fully vested, and at that point, they can't take those away from you. If it's less than, then guess what? They can, you know. Portability allows you to move your retirement benefits from one employer to another. This happens once you're vested. So you can't work 1 year or 2 years and think that you can then take those benefits to another company if you're not fully vested. So you need to know what your vesting thresholds and time limits are for your company where you're employed, especially before you jump ship. If you're fully vested at 5 years and you're at 4, don't quit. Wait. Just bite the bullet, as they say, and hold on for a year and 2 months, right? And then quit. Your retirement plan, right? It's established and funded by the employer and or employees to fund you and your retirement years. So it can be either solely your employer who funds it. It can be you and your employer, or it can just be you that funds it. We have a defined benefit plan where you're promised a pension amount based on your age and years of service. The contribution plan that's defined is where the company and or you make an annual payment to your account. The cash balance plan are based on an accumulated contribution made by the company, where a percentage of your pay plus whatever the interest percentage or interest rate is added to the balance of your plan. Now, how we define benefits, the difference between a defined benefit and defined contribution retirement plan are these. The defined benefit is funded at least in part by your company, but the defined contribution is usually funded by you and the company. The amount of benefit paid at retirement is predetermined in a defined benefit. In defined contribution, the amount is determined on the basis of the investment performance, how well that investment did, right? It's usually based on some kind of stocks and commodities, things of that nature. Now, under defined benefit, the employer takes on the investment risk, while in defined contribution, you take on the investment risk. The defined benefit is guaranteed by a PBGC, which is a pension benefit guarantee corporation. But under a defined contribution, your benefit is not guaranteed, right? Because it's an investment that is based on the performance of how well it's doing on the market. Under defined benefit, the amount of your contribution can change based on the assumption of an actuary, while under a defined contribution, the amount of your contribution is defined by you at whatever participation level that you choose, and then the company will match your participation level. Under the defined benefit, it's usually common in public sector and unionized workforces, while defined contribution is what you normally find in private sector and non-union workforces. So you can be able to look at your company based on the type of sector you're working in and see whether or not you are part of a defined benefit plan or if you have defined contribution retirement plans. So usually under the common defined contribution plans, you usually have the profit sharing, the ESOPs, the 401k plan, where a percentage of your pay is withheld and invested in a tax-deferred account. Is usually and you can't draw down on that account until after a specified age, usually 62 and a half and older. Sometimes it can be older than that. Auto enrollment is where your contributions to the plan are started automatically when you're eligible to join. There are some legal retirements that are tied to retirement benefits, such as the Employee Retirement Security, the Income Act of 74, which is ERISA. ADIA is the retirement benefits and age discrimination that was enacted in 1986. OBPA is the Older Workers Benefits Protection Act of 1990. These things you need to embed in your mind because they will definitely pop up on a quiz or an exam. Healthcare benefits, most important, right? They're the most important that you can offer to employees. We all get injured, fall ill to something. Women can become pregnant, so on and so forth, right? That's the most important benefit that a company can offer. It usually covers medical, dental, prescription, and vision expenses. Compared to the year 2000, we have fewer Americans covered by health plans, fewer private companies that provide it, and fewer employees that are actually enrolled. So you can be, and what the difference between covered and enrolled is that the ability to have it versus those that actually get it. So let's look at some of the increases in costs since 2000. Premiums for single workers increased by 100%. Family premiums increased 125%. Employees pay more of the premiums. The average health care coverage expenses are expected to increase to $11,304 a year. Employees are predicted to pay 23.6% of premiums. That's $2,664 and $2,487 in out-of-pocket expenses since the year 2000. People are like, what in the world? Well, this is the answer of insurance companies whenever they feel the pinch of regulations of some sort. Is they transfer that added cost to the consumer, to whoever's purchasing. Well, if the employer purchases, the employer is now going to shift some of that cost to the worker because they don't want to cover the full cost. So if something is $100, the company is like, okay, well, we'll pay $50 and the employee will pay $50, or we'll pay $40 and the employee can pay $60, or we'll pay, $60 and the employee, but I'm not going to cover the full $100. Now, mind you, that $100 cost to the company may not actually be a real tangible $100. It could just kind of be the penalty that the insurance company is doing to right, to put out there for whatever added cost or penalties or whatever they're being subjected to, that I'm going to now forward this over. So the actual cost may only be $60, but they've now provided a premium of an additional $40 that the companies are now subjected to. So what companies then do is whatever costs, let's say I don't really even want to cover that. So I'm now going to say that only full-time employees are eligible for this because I don't want to have to pay $50 for every employee. But look at that. If the actual cost is normally $60, and an employee in the past was used to paying $25 or even $30, let's say it was an even split, $25 to $30 is considerably less than having to pay 50 or 60. See the difference? It's like, whoa, that's huge. It's a jump. It's a huge jump. So everyone is basically passing down their cost to the little person, which happens to be the employee. When we look at healthcare reform, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, PACA, was phased into coverage in 2014. And of course, there's been constant debate and litigation surrounding it. But it specified that a full-time worker is anyone that works 30 hours a week. This employer-sponsored benefit will continue to change, especially under the new administration, because full-time used to be in a worker that was either 35 or 40. It used to be 40 hours a week was considered full-time. With it being narrowed down to saying 30 hours a week, that is why you now have some employers who are saying, well, I'm going to knock folks down. I'm going to say they're working 29 hours and less. And you will see employers saying for a part-time position, 20 to 25 hours, 20 to 25 hours, right, for part-time. I want you to calculate how much you would need to make in order to live off of and survive working 20 to 25 hours a week. You're barely getting by. So that means you're definitely not able to afford healthcare costs, right? When this was rolled out, it was a great idea to consider that we all have access to coverage. What we never considered is how would the private sector, how would insurance companies, how would individual employers resist and fight back? They fought back by increasing premiums of insurance. They fought back by employers adjusting what is considered full-time so that they wouldn't have to cover employees. See how that goes? People will always find a way to get around something, to find a loophole. When we look at the key provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and for those of you that don't know, this is what is called Obamacare. It requires, and I'm going to zoom in so that you can see closer. Let's see if I can get it closer without it going off my screen. There we go. It requires that most individuals maintain a minimum essential coverage or pay a penalty. That was a doozy for a lot of people because we already feel like we pay penalties and taxes and everything else. We're constantly feeling punished. It required that companies with 50 or more employees who work 30 hours a week or more would be provided with health care coverage, or the company pays a penalty. You see the loophole? Now, back to the first one. You have to maintain a minimum essential coverage or pay a penalty. The thing is that if you're broke, if you're at or below the poverty level, you're not penalized. This is really for those who that have the economic means but choose not to get coverage. That's the penalty. Now, second penalty. You have 50 or more employees, they work 30 hours or more a week, but you don't provide them health care coverage, you're penalized. How do companies counter that? They drop their workforce down. Half their workforce, if not more than half, are now part-time employees. That means I only have to pay half or less than half of healthcare coverage. And I'm going to revamp my healthcare plan to make it where even if I'm providing healthcare coverage, guess what? They'll be paying higher premiums. I'll take a less of a hit on the front end. Then the ACA extended dependent coverage up to age 26. I love that because we're taking into consideration that you have a lot of students who are still in college. Then coming out of college, you're not necessarily getting that job that has healthcare benefits, right? It eliminates lifetime and unreasonable annual benefit limits. It requires coverage for preventative services, which before that was never a mandatory thing. It restricts insurance companies from setting rates based on an individual's health status, medical conditions, or other health-related factors. How did insurance companies counter this? They just jacked up, they just increased the rates just across the board, and they increased rates based on states and regions, where you can then look at an overarching display of what is the average health status in that state. So for instance, when you look at the state of Mississippi, that has very low rates of health, right, just in the tank, also tied to very high rates of poverty, then at that point, I can increase the rate of what I'm going to charge for insurance in that state. That is how insurance companies found the loophole with regards to this. The other provision is that it creates state-run healthcare exchanges through which insurance companies will offer competitive health plans. This has created so many healthcare plan options that the average person has no clue what any of this means. So now we have all of these different things and you don't know, which remember, as I shared in a previous slide, that at that point, a purchaser of insurance doesn't know if they're getting adequate insurance or too much insurance or not enough. You just don't know. You don't know what it means. It's just like a foreign language because no one has been fully educated on insurance. The only people that 100% know are those that are in insurance, that work for insurance companies. Once again, they have the advantage there. So when we look at how we can control benefit costs, you have to reduce or drop benefits, cost share with employees, as I mentioned earlier, sponsor wellness programs, foster employee health education, right? Change prescription drug programs and consolidate your benefits package. We talked about this earlier. How do we increase employee contributions? There are various programs that attempt to reduce the costs paid by the companies through something as managed care, which monitors and reduces medical costs through various restrictions and alternatives of the market system. They create spousal exclusions that will limit access to a health plan if your spouse already works for another company that also offers health insurance. So if your husband or wife company offers insurance, then no, you cannot piggyback off of two plans. Either if your spouse has it and they're insured, you get insured under your spouse, but you cannot have access to both. Something else is a consumer-driven health plan, a CDH, which provides the company with a financial contribution to employees to help cover expenses that are related to your health. And it gives you as the employee ownership of the dollars that are invested in your health care. Figure 1311 is a timeline of COBRA notification requirements. Now, there are certain events, there's 8 events that can take place, and there's deadlines tied to these events. When COBRA is initially provided notice, that is taking place within 30 days after you first become enrolled in the group health care plan, within 30 days after the qualifying event date, 14 days from the date the plan administrator receives notification from the employee, 60 days from the date that the notice was given to COBRA, 45 days from the date of electing COBRA, 30 days after the first date of each month. And then you see 60 days. That's tied to your employee qualified beneficiary to notify plan administrator of a qualifying event. Now, you have 3 monthly periods tied to continuation period. 18 months after a qualifying event for an employee that is terminated is when the continuation period ends. 29 months after the qualifying event for a disabled terminated employee, and then 36 months after a qualifying event for a spouse and dependent child or children who are participating in that plan. But you see the different events, and then, of course, the notification deadlines tied to those events. This is key. I have experienced where someone tried to be nickel slick, I will say, and not notify COBRA when there was a termination from a company of being covered by the company. They delayed it so that and what it did was it threw off the benefits, because you then, in order to stay covered, you're paying a higher premium than you would as if you were just covered by the employer. However, you're getting the same benefit package that you were receiving when you were covered by the employer's plan. It's just a much higher premium. Sometimes that premium can be $500 a month, it could be $600 a month, it could be $700 a month. And they have sometimes different packages, bronze, silver, gold package to choose from, depending on what your company already had established through that insurance company. Under HIPAA, this was established in 1996. It allows you to switch your health insurance when you change employers. It requires employers to provide privacy notices to you, not disclose your health information without authorization, consider an entity that handles health information a business associate, and consider any disclosure of that information as a breach in that contract, in that agreement between you and the employer. Now, there are some types of financial benefits, including insurance, financial services, and education assistance that organizations can provide. Under insurance, of course, it's the common ones: medical, dental, life, disability, long-term care, and legal. Financial services include credit unions, purchase discounts, stock purchase plans, financial planning, discount club memberships. Education assistance includes tuition reimbursement, trade training, certification or licensure, and learning materials. When we look at some of the common types of insurance benefits, let's look at something that's not known to a lot of employees. Let's look at legal insurance, where you or the company can pay a flat fee for a fixed number of hours of legal assistance each month. Not every company provides this, so it's something that you should zoom in on if you ever do see it as an option. Long-term care insurance, a lot of people don't know about. You really should focus on investing in, where it allows you to purchase insurance to cover costs for long-term care needs if you are ever placed in a nursing home, assisted living facility, or you're bound at home where you're having nursing provided in your home. If ever you're disabled and unable to work, disability insurance provides continuing income to protect you. And life insurance is usually a coverage of 1 1/2 or 2 times your annual salary, and it's something that you're able to buy into. Now, FMLA covers if you work for a company with 50 or more employees who live within 75 miles of the workplace. You have to have worked at least 12 months and 1,250 hours in the previous year. in order to be eligible. It provides a maximum of 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave during any 12-month period. If by chance you give birth to a child, you have newborn care needs within 1 year of the birth, if you adopt a child, or you have become a foster parent, you have placement of a child, it provides time for that. If you need to care for a spouse, a child, or parent that has a serious health condition. Serious health condition is defined as something that is happening to you, illness or injury that requires any kind of inpatient care or any kind of continuing treatment for a medical problem that exists beyond 3 days. If by chance you are part of a military family and you need to handle the affairs of military members that are called away to active duty, and those 26 weeks leave to care for a military service member that have been injured while on active duty. There's an impact to this act because there's a significant percentage of employees who have taken this leave, and employers have to cover the workload for that missing employee. So it puts a significant demand on HR professionals to ensure that companies are compliant and that employees are compliant with those provisions. Some various guidelines that you have to follow under this administration is making sure that the individual can return to the same or equivalent job when they return, that they have continued health care benefits while they're away, that intermittent leave is permitted, meaning they don't have to leave and take the full allotted time, but they can take a few weeks, come back to work, and then later on take a few weeks. Use of paid vacation and personal leave are required, that it runs concurrently with other disability leave, and that there's no penalty under attendance policy. And the final two is that there's a 30-day notice from employee is required, and that fitness for duty test upon return is permitted, so that you can be able to ascertain that that person is fit to perform the duties that they were doing before they left upon their return. There are various family care benefits that include, as we mentioned earlier, adoption and child care, but also elder care assistance. We really need to increase these benefits and ensure that they're offered in all size organizations. Time off and other benefits include PTO, employee paid group benefits, vacation and holiday, leaves of absence, family and sick leave, and the traditional family and holiday pay. With that, you guys can learn more in Chapter 13. If you have any questions, please email me. Thank you.